Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Homecomings podcast. I'm your host, Evelina Olachowska, multi-passionate creative designer and founder of my dear design studio, Studio Dumka. And, I know I say this at the top of probably every single episode, but I am so pumped to be bringing this conversation to you guys today. I had the absolute pleasure, I will add, of interviewing Jessica Maniatis today on the show. And Jessica is someone who is a brand somatics coach, consultant, creative, and founder of her beautiful new business venture, Terre-Prana, where she works and supports fellow founders along their journey of growing their businesses. And Jessica's story is one that is so powerful, so inspiring, and just so jam-packed of just so many goodies that I think, I don't want to say I know, but I feel like I can confidently say I know that people tuning in and listening will find resonance, because she, in her sharing in this interview, is so open, so vulnerable, and goes so deep that whenever I have these conversations with guests, it just leaves this this resonance and this energy that I'm still feeling and buzzing off of, to be quite frank. Which is why I was rushing to record this interview this introduction, because a practice I've been doing this season is just to record the intro right after I share the episode, as I'm still kind of just vibing high off of the energy that I experience in the chat. And so when I wrapped up my chat with Jessica, I'm like, I just need to channel a beautiful, intentional introduction to really lay the foundation and the groundwork for what we're about to get into in this discussion. Normally, when I come into conversations with guests, I have a list of talking points, and I keep the conversations free-flowing and open, of course, depending where we venture down. And I know a conversation was really, really good when we don't touch on anything on the list. Now, I try my best, especially in this season, because it's focused around this topic of change and transition, to kind of reel the conversation back in. But with Jess, there was I don't know, it was just all free-flowing and magical. And this has probably been my longest interview to date. We just kept going. And to be honest, I could have kept talking with Jess for 3 more hours easily. And once we stopped recording, we continued chatting even more. So much so to the point where I ended up blocking my boyfriend out of the apartment, because the conversation went on for so long and he came back from work. And I finally saw the text on my phone when he came back in, and felt so bad because he had been waiting for 20 minutes in his car. But all to say, it was well worth it, because this chat was so good, you guys. So to just give a little bit of a foreshadowing and a preview on this dialogue, because I really want you guys to tune in and listen to the full extent of the conversation. I know it's a lengthy one. I try to keep the chats within an hour or so, just being mindful of guests' time, but just had time. And so I'm let's keep going, because I personally love a good 3-hour Joe Rogan-esque style interview where, the conversation just keeps flowing. Sometimes the 45-minute hour chats are just not enough for me. That's when we just start getting beneath the surface and the good stuff starts coming up. And I will just share, it just keeps getting better and better with Jess as we keep unfolding and peeling back the layers of her personal journey, but also all these deviations that we ended up going down, touching on anything and everything from trust, how to connect with your intuition. She shared a beautiful bit on paying attention to verbiage, specifically the word should. Where are you pigeonholing yourself essentially to feel like you need to do something, and where can you come in with your discernment to really feel into what's a need in your life? And this is all beautifully, positioned, I can say, within the context of her personal story and how she navigated so many different career transitions. I will say the conversation gets started around the context of her career trajectory, of her starting her business, her design studio in Boston, and running that for 10 years before closing it, to then transitioning into a corporate job, to then coming back around and starting her most latest beautiful business venture, Terre-Prana, which I mentioned. And so within that foundation, we then deviate and touch on so many other topics that really, I always preface in these intros and most conversations and saying you absolutely don't have to be a business owner to tune in to kind of pay attention. Of course, we touch on some things related to entrepreneurship and branding and all of that stuff. But I think this conversation in particular, despite being grounded in like a career conversation, really spans so much. I mean, Jess doesn't hold anything back. And we go into even, conversations of her dealing with a lot of personal life stuff, of navigating various, miscarriages with her partner and experiencing unfulfillment and distress in, yes, life, but it came out of the unfulfillment with business and how she was really overworking herself in her studio that she was leading. And so I don't know, I just feel like no stone was left unturned in this chat. And I think it came to a beautiful full circle moment too at the end of us touching on the coaching industry, as well as she's found herself now in this position with her business Terre-Prana, her current day business that she opened just recently. I mean, when I had connected with Jess, and I'll share a little bit of a context of how we met, because I think the story is really beautiful and powerful, and it also just sheds light on the dialogue that we started talking about in the show of us having connected and met. But we end on the topic of coaching and essentially what she's doing now. And so for anyone who's ever considered working with a coach, has been curious about it, or maybe just has like a mistrust and skepticism about the coaching industry, we talk all about that at the end. And that was a really fascinating bit at the end of that chat. So if you're curious about that, definitely stick around to the end of the episode, because we get into all that stuff plus more. So before I just hand the mic over to our interview, I just want to share the story of how Jess and I got connected, because it's one of those stories that honestly feels quite random. But after this chat, I realized like how beautifully intentional it was in all these, like, again, I want to say little unexpected ways of me coming to connect with Jess throughout the years. Because yeah, I don't know, just again, there's a purpose for this conversation. I really feel it. And I'm really looking forward to putting it out because again, there's going to be resonance. I feel it, friends, for my audience here and listeners. But the story of how Jess and I got connected, I can't even tell you the year, but let's go back to me post-college. So 2016, 2017. So 8-ish years ago. Again, time is fuzzy as I don't really remember the details of it, but it was basically in a time period of my life where I was very lost and confused. I had finished college. I had been working in an architecture firm. I went to college for architecture, landed this job in an architecture firm, thought this is it. Like, this is what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. I landed this beautiful job, but very quickly I fell into so much confusion and unfulfillment as the job just wasn't giving me the same spark that I experienced in design school. And so what proceeded after about a year or so of working there was this deep, what I like to call quarter life crisis, of me really being so lost and in the weeds and uncertain of not knowing what to do with my life. And so it was a deep soul searching journey of sending my resume out to any and every which job and opportunity. I think I for sure share more of this story in my first episode of the podcast ever. So if anyone's curious about that, definitely tune back into episode 1 of season 1 to hear more. But essentially, I was soul searching. And what came on my radar during this time was a panel of speakers speaking about digital design, from what I can vaguely recall, at the Moo headquarters, Moo being the printing company in Boston. And so out of curiosity, I had attended this workshop, and Jess was a panelist. She was a speaker on this panel, during this workshop. And she immediately stood out to me for her energy, how she was answering questions, the confidence she exuded. And it's actually really comical because we talk about that moment at the beginning of this episode, and her experience from that day was so totally opposite. And you'll hear like her navigating imposter syndrome, questioning, like, does she even have a place on this panel? But me on the other side of it, like little Evelina, just fresh out of college, I saw this woman as like radiating, like truly so inspiring. And I started following her just, on social or LinkedIn. We had connected, and that was really it. Like I kind of just like stayed in the loop of what she was doing. I knew she was running her design studio. She did beautiful work. I thought maybe I could be a graphic designer. And then I did eventually follow the path of graphic design. At one point, I had seen Jess post an announcement on LinkedIn that she had taken up a corporate job at this company called Continuum. And I was like, okay, interesting. And then, me being like so wishy-washy with LinkedIn, like I'm never on that platform, I kind of like forgot about Jess for many years as I hadn't tuned into LinkedIn. I hadn't seen any posts from her, or she just wasn't on my radar. And come a couple months ago at the top of this year, so 2025 comes around, and I log in LinkedIn and I see a post from her, and it was about starting a new business. And there was just this like nudge for me where I'm like, I have to reach out to her. Like I had never talked to her. I think I had approached her at that Moo panel and like asked her a question or something. Like I truly don't recall. It's such a blur. But there was just this nudge inside me to reach out to Jess, send her an email, and ask to connect. If you guys have been following the show in the season so far, you'd have heard my solo episodes to date where I'm really kind of going in and sharing with you guys the distress and kind of like these unknown feelings that I'm navigating around what my life, particularly through the lens of business, looks like. So I reached out to Jess because I was just curious for her to share her story with me, hoping that I could maybe garner some sort of insights or lessons and takeaways from what she had gone through. And so she was so sweet and open into connecting, and we chatted for well over an hour, and her just sharing her story with me. And I found so much, again, just like resonance, that by the time we stopped the conversation, I realized I'm like, I need to have Jess on the show to talk about this, because I like had wished that we were recording. It was such a pure, beautiful dialogue of her just sharing her experiences and all the life lessons that I will be honest in sharing. Like I set maybe a little expectation of like hoping that this interview was going to be just as good as that dialogue, if not better. And I will tell you, friends, like it absolutely was like just the most delightful thing. Like we went deeper into that initial chat that we had, and yeah, just ventured down so many more topics and rabbit holes that I'm going to pause here because I could keep going. And clearly, maybe, hopefully, you could tell like my energy from this intro recording is just really high, because truly I'm feeling very just lit up by the chat we just had. So please, friends, stay so open-minded and really just like open your hearts and ears to hearing this lovely and very inspiring conversation with my dear guest, Jessica Maniatis. Alrighty, well, we can just jump right in, Jess. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited for wherever this conversation takes us.
Yes, me too, me too. And again, just deep gratitude to you for being open to chatting about this again. I know I mentioned to you before we press record, we connected back in February now. So it's, I mean, a little over a month ago, but still,
Yeah.
when that conversation ended, I was like, man, should have pressed record on that one because it was so good. And so, however this one turns out, I don't doubt, again, like I shared, it's going to be perfect. And whatever rabbit holes we venture down, I don't doubt they're going to be intended as, yeah, just like perfectly as they were meant. So I'm looking forward to it. Yes. So I like to kick off the top of every conversation with each guest with a little icebreaker question, which is,
I got
what is
Okay.
something that has been bringing you joy this past month?
Ah, okay. Well, sunshine. I
Mm,
live in LA. So I really can't complain about the weather ever, but we went through a period of multiple days of rain. And listen, I grew up on the East Coast. I spent 39 years on the East Coast. So it's laughable now that a couple days in a row of rain have me fully like in bed depressed, but the sunshine has been everything. Um, I've really been making time to get outside and just have my face in the sun. So
Mm.
that brings me joy, and it's my reset place. When I'm starting to feel stressed, if I've been staring at a screen too long, I know I can reset in the sun. And then there's my son, physical son, who
Mm.
brings me so much joy every day. He is literally a beam of sunshine.
Oh,
He's just so funny. He's 3 and he just fills every room with so much joy and laughter. So I probably should have started with him as the first, but
best for
as a
last,
parent,
right?
it ebbs and flows.
Yes, best for last, I
Not
would
always
argue.
pure joy, but yes, yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And I can so feel that as literally the last couple weeks here in Connecticut, like New England, have finally turned around. So today I think it's going to be 61 degrees, which is just like
Amazing.
amazing. Because
Get outside.
this was a tough winter. It really was. Like I don't remember the last time a New England winter was this like bad. So I think everyone's feeling it and they're just ready for spring.
Well, I mean, the spring equinox is in 2 days. So I
Yes.
think as we get closer to that every year, it builds this momentum. Everyone's so eager. And when the
Hmm.
sun hits, when you feel your feet in the soil again, it's a really necessary grounding after a long winter.
Yeah. And I think, well, for sure, for a lot of people, the new year is kind of this time. I think,
Mhm.
well, for definitely like astrologically speaking, if we're into that stuff, it is the beginning of the new astrological season. And with
Mhm.
spring and the symbolism that brings of new beginnings, it's interesting for me to observe how, like, actual New Year's, like January 1st, has held less and less resonance.
Totally.
And maybe just like the springtime now being more prominent, I think because you actually feel the change shifting. And there's just something when, like, experientially and viscerally and tangibly, you can connect with physical change. It's just, I don't know, to me, it just makes it feel a little bit more concrete, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense.
Yeah.
We're by nature, this is our calendar. This is our new year.
Yeah.
Um, and I definitely agree. I've never been one for New Year's resolutions. It's never really resonated, but springtime resolutions, I feel like that's when everything shifts into action for me. I feel so much more motivated. And both equinoxes, to be honest, I mean, the fall equinox, I similarly associate with a lot of kind of planning and preparing. It's when you're kind of planting the seeds for the winter, and then you're here to really start to reap them, grow them, sow them, I guess.
Yeah,
And yeah,
absolutely.
the momentum kind of kicks back in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think timing wise, speaking about the equinox and the changes that are happening, and connecting it back to the driver for this season for the podcast for me, and also so much of what I just felt was a really prevalent theme in the dialogue that we had when we connected last month is transitions, is change.
Totally.
And so it's so interesting because, this is the second time we're connecting. And I think what's like with social media and just life, it's so interesting in that, like, you can follow the life of a stranger, like a complete person that you don't
So
know.
bizarre, but so true.
Yeah.
And you
And
feel so connected, even though you've never had this sort of dialogue or in-person
yeah.
connection. You still feel connected to their story, connected to what's driving them. We share so much. It's
Hmm.
not always exactly what's going on, but we try.
For sure. For sure. And I think for myself, in first connecting with you again, we had talked about it in that conversation last month, like, we both, like, timelines are kind of blurry, but it was, I think about it and it feels like forever ago when I was fresh out of college working at my architecture firm, and in my quarter life crisis, that I like to call it, of thinking, what the heck is, like, happening in my life, because I just finished school. I thought I wanted to be an architect and I'm working at this job. It's not bringing me joy. I don't feel as fulfilled maybe that I would. And so seeing, and again, I can't tell you, I truly don't remember how this unfolded, but I remember seeing a post from Moo, the printing company, on, having a panel and a little event speaking about branding. And I think it was like graphic design. And that was something that I was exploring because I wasn't sure yet if I should pivot and venture into that as a career profession. And so I attended that event. You were a speaker, and I just felt so, I don't know, I was so fascinated by your shares and what you had to say during that event. And since then, I had just kind of, I started following you on LinkedIn. And just every now and then, because I'm rarely on it, would just kind of see updates from you. And the latest update, after me not showing up on LinkedIn for months, which was just a couple months ago now, is you having started a new business venture, another life change happening. So, through my perspective, Jess, and again, the little that I know about you since our last chat, if I was to kind of, take the observer seat, to me, I've just seen these like beautiful seasons of these like career transitions for you, where I followed you when you started your original business, years ago, your branding studio, and then you transitioned into another job, and now you're transitioning yet again into another job. So tell us if you'd like to just maybe offer us a little bit more of an overview of who is Jess and maybe what those seasons were. Feel free to go as deep as you'd like, or even before me, because I met you again maybe 8 or so years ago. So,
Okay. Well, be careful suggesting I go deep because I could go really deep
we
with
have
this.
time.
Um, yeah, I mean, that mood talk feels like an entirely different lifetime. And in many respects, it was. My life has changed so much and so drastically since that time period. And it's so interesting. I was actually just writing a post this morning for my Substack. I've started a Substack
Oh, yay.
um, about closing my business.
Hmm.
And when I think back to that period of my life when I was speaking at the Moon Panel, it was not it was not what it looked like, right? I was really suffering from a lot of imposter syndrome. I remember sitting up on that panel feeling like, who am I to be sitting here? So it's always interesting to hear kind of the outside perception of what was going on. And at that time, I think I probably had my business for about 8 years. I opened JSGD. Originally, it was called Jessica Sutton Graphic Design because it was just me and I wasn't married yet. So Jessica Sutton Graphic Design in 2008. I had been working in-house for Fresh Cosmetics, doing all sorts of graphic design, packaging, web, everything. And I loved it. But, working in house, you have a very fixed brand standards guide that you can work within. I believe our brand color was hex reference 333, which is gray.
Too good.
So there was only so far we could go. We had some really fun patterns and whatnot in our packaging, but um, I was young, I was in my 20s, and I just started taking on freelance clients because I wanted to expand my portfolio. I wanted to play with more colors. I wanted to do things. And I just fell in love early on with helping translate a founder's dream into a real tangible business. And at the time, I really saw that as design, right? So you have this idea, well, I can design the logo for you. I can design the website for you. I can bring it to life. Now, my definition of brand is so much more all encompassing because I see a brand really just as a business. And I'm way more ingrained in the day-to-day business operations with a lot of my clients than I am the branding. But at the time, it was really like, I'll bring your brand to life. And as I grew my client list on the side, the work I was doing for freelance was taking more time than my day-to-day job at Fresh. And I worked for an absolutely amazing creative director there, Alina Royberg. She was the co-founder. And I approached her. I was like, I think I have to quit. And she's like, no, 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 don't quit. She's like, you're starting something. Like, stay working with us 2 or 3 days a week. Have a steady paycheck that you can count on while you build this thing, which was honestly the greatest gift
Yeah, so
from one
beautiful.
entrepreneur to another. And I was so young then, and she was just such a mothering, nurturing figure in my life, and an amazing creative director that I still catch myself mimicking in a lot of how I approach design. So here I was, I think 26, doing all of this. And I just kept building my client base. And I continued to fall in love with founders, their stories, their drivers. And before I knew it, cut to a couple of years later, I had a large studio space in South Boston. I had a growing team. It all felt really good. And it felt like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I kept taking on more clients and I kept hiring more designers. And I think there was a little catch 22 in my lack of a business plan, in that really I wanted to cater to small businesses. And my mission statement originally was, I think, making beautiful design accessible to everyone. It's something. The problem I ran into was a lot of small businesses they don't have big budgets. They come with small budgets. And here I was trying to grow my own business and kept taking on more and more clients than my team could handle. So we would hire more designers to facilitate. And it was just this constant cycle. And I felt like I was getting further and further removed from the design process. I was really turning into much more of a sales role. I was talking with clients, doing the discovery calls, doing the intake, all of that, handing some of the work off to my team. And what I loved the most when I started was that collaboration with the clients. So I was getting less and less of that. Around 2017, I hired my first coach, an executive coach, which was a truly transformative experience for me. She was wonderful in helping us push forward, trying out new rates, going after a different caliber of clientele, all the things that you should do as you're scaling, service-based offering like that.
Mm-hmm.
The unfortunate thing is that we pushed forward with all of this momentum without, well, I say we, me and my coach, my team, whatnot, but mostly me, without pausing. I didn't pause to actually check in with myself to see if this is what still resonated. Was I still in alignment with this path that I was on? And I joke about not having a business plan, but I was so young when I started this. It was just freelancing. And all of a sudden I have a business. And I loved it, but I wasn't as in love with the direction it was going. I was kind of going down this path because it was what I thought my team wanted. It's what I thought everyone around me expected. I wanted to be able to offer things like health insurance to my team and all this stuff. And really what started happening was my body was speaking up and I was listening. I was getting sick left and right. I was so run down. The level of stress that I was under was seemingly insurmountable. My husband and I were trying to get pregnant. We went through a lot of miscarriages during that time. And I also wasn't really giving myself enough space to truly grieve each one of them either. I was just pushing forward. How it is when you're running a business. You can't take breaks. It feels like that's the perception of it, right? So I was going down this path. My body was speaking up. I wasn't listening. And we were trying out all these new pricing structures. And I remember we had 3 contracts or scope of works out there, proposals. And they were all at these new pricing tiers that I was like not fully embracing. Like my energy was just nervous everywhere. And you know how that works with sales, the energetics of sales. If you're not fully in it, if you don't believe in yourself and what you're selling, it's not going to land. Mm-hmm. So we had 3 large proposals out. And when the first one passed, I remember talking to my COO and I was like, I don't know. I mean, if the next 2 don't, what are we going to do? I'm going to sneeze.
Yeah.
Hold on. Edit that out. Oh, wait. It's
I'm
gonna
bracing.
come up at some random point now. Anyways, I remember talking to my COO, and we were worried, looking at the numbers, looking at the overhead, looking at these proposals, and the second one passed. And then the third one passed. And I remember I stayed up that whole night with my husband, and the writing was so on the wall that this was just not what I was supposed to be doing anymore. I had ignored all of the messages from my body, from my intuition. I wasn't trusting myself. And oddly enough, whenever we're in times of uncertainty, we lean towards things to give us comfort. So I was pulling tarot left and right. I was journaling, I was meditating, and the messages that kept coming up loud and clear every single time was a message to trust yourself. And it was at the point where I was getting annoyed. I was like, universe, please stop with this message. I do trust myself. What are you talking about? And it was like, girl, you're not listening
It's
to
like you
yourself.
think you know, but you really don't.
Oh, you really don't. So, I closed the studio. I told everyone we were sunsetting. I put this beautiful language to it. And, in hindsight, I can see just how much optics played a role in everything that I was doing with my business. I grew up as a pastor's daughter, so perfectionism and presentation were very big in how I was raised. So it's always been something that I've been hyper focused on, and that I've actually spent the last few years just shedding all of those layers, which is not easy. So yeah, at the time, it felt like a huge failure for me. It felt like I had failed my team. It felt like I failed my family. I felt everyone around me who had these expectations for my business. And I kind of fell backwards after closing into this role at Continuum. Continuum they still exist. We were acquired while I was working there by EPAM, but very similar to IDEO. So all of a sudden I was doing this type of work that I was very unused to, which was research-based solutioning, innovation consulting is what we called it. It was a lot of ethnographic research, talking to people, and I was struggling. I was like sitting on my hands. When can I design something? You mean we're going to spend 2 months doing research before we even concept? Like, I was so not used to the research phase, because all of the work I had been doing before was like, go, go, go. I hear what you want. We're going to create what you want. You'll get it quickly, and you can afford it. It's packaged for you. So during that time, I kind of lost myself in learning this new skill set that I fell in love with. But more than that, I lost myself. I had no sense of self during that time, because my entire identity had been wrapped up in my business. And it was named after me in the beginning, right? We
Yeah,
shortened
quite literally, your business was
it
you.
through my name. So that was my identity, and I just felt like I was swimming upstream, trying to figure out, which way, or maybe it's just like paddling, trying to figure out which way is up. It was a lot of shedding belief systems. It was a deep, deep time for really rebirthing myself. My husband and I ended up moving to LA, which brought with it an entirely amazing new breath of energy and fresh air for me. We had our son in early 21, and I kind of, after I got out of the new mom fog, which lasts a long time.
Yeah.
Like, he was probably a year and a half before I finally lifted my head up and was like, this no longer suits me, this role. And I was very clear on, I need to work with mission-driven brands again, and understand the work I had been doing at Continuum was, we're working with Fortune 500 brands. really going into the belly of these businesses to understand what's not working, what's not resonating. And quite often it was like, you could see clearly, or at least for myself, how my brain works. I could see this moment where they made a decision in the business that critically changed the course of the business and therefore changed something. It doesn't resonate anymore with the customers or the employee experience or whatnot. And I loved that work, but I found myself constantly feeling almost disgusted by some of the, I hate saying this, but by some of the brands we were working with.
Mm.
The lack of morals, the lack of, a line in the sand around their mission and like where they'll go, where they won't go. It was very eye-opening to me to, all of a sudden be working with like very mission-driven businesses to huge corporations. So I really set my sights on returning to that work. I found myself in-house again after many, many years, which felt great, but um, a little claustrophobic as well. The same feelings were kind of coming up and surfacing for me that I had back when I was in house when I was younger. But this time I had an entirely different skill set. I was working as a VP. I was, helping the founders strategize. I was leading and growing a creative team. It was all wonderful work, and I'm still working with them as a client now. But
Mm-hmm.
I've launched Terre-Prana, which feels really good in the sense
Yes,
that
your
it's
latest business
truly,
venture.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
so truly aligned with me. And I haven't jumped into it without pausing and really doing the work to assess what is it that I'm here to do, right? Not what is it that I want to do?
Mm.
What is it that I'm here to do? And that is quite simply helping others, especially business founders, remember how to trust themselves
Mm-hmm.
and seeing just how far off track my own business went when I lost that sense of trust, and how off track large businesses can go when they lose sight of why they originally started. Many of those businesses, the founders aren't as involved anymore, so you can't speak to that. But the work I'm doing now really is deeply insightful coaching and consulting with founders. And it's all rooted in somatics. So bringing it back to the body. How is your body talking to you? What is it saying? How do you need to tap in and listen? And then really viewing brands and a business as a founder as an extension of yourself. So when something is blocked energetically with yourself, quite often that's actually reflected directly in your business. So we spend a lot of time first unpacking, where they're physically feeling blocked, energetically feeling blocked, where they're feeling a disconnect from their brand or business, and then looking at the business itself. And I do these amazing brand health assessments where it's kind of a miniature version of what I was doing at the Continuum, right? Where I'm talking to the founder, stakeholders within the company, leaders, employees, talking to customers, looking at the brand positioning in the market, packaging it all up and saying, these are the opportunities, and founder who I'm working with, all that stuff we've been talking about, this is how it's appearing. This is why customers aren't resonating anymore. It's not clicking or landing. So it's been really fun work. It's something that I have been naturally starting to do over the last few years, just on the side, and it's crystallized now into this actual offering. And I think I mentioned before we started recording, but I feel like I'm getting my sea legs again, running the business
Yeah.
right back in the seat, but in a totally different mindset than my 26-year-old self was. I'm 43 now. So
Yeah. What a
what a life
journey. Yeah.
difference.
Ah, well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And amidst all of your moments, I just like I was jotting notes as you were speaking because there's so many different like tangents I want to go down,
Oh,
but
yeah. I mean, we can go down it. I'm
oh,
happy
so
to.
many. And I think in you going into the detail and depth that you did and almost letting us in on the lessons that you garnered, so powerful because I think there's so much value in hearing the stories and the details specifically. And this is why I was like, I need to talk with Jessica and I need her to share her story so we can record it, because I really feel like there's so much that people can garner from your experiences and the lessons that you pulled. I think where I want to start, in just a reflection, in like rehearing your story the second time when you shared it with me, is I think that what's so beautiful and clear to me from how you started to where you are now is it's such like a visceral example of turning pain into purpose. Like you quite literally went through everything that you did with starting your business and then leaving your business to work for a more, we could say, like traditional corporate type of setting, to now coming back into business again, but it's so different. Like it's same but very, very different. And it's almost like, I mean, it quite literally is you having gone through this journey to garner all these lessons and takeaways that you did to now apply it and channel it into your purpose again. So, sharing that as a reflection, because to me, it's like, it's so clear. And I think this is so too where I have conversations all the time with prospective clients, or even it's with like a family member or friend that could feel like they're lost in life. And
Mm.
I always kind of go back to, I mean, there's so many ways where you can look into like next steps for what you're kind of meant to be doing. And you could look at like gifts and talents and what are compliments that people are telling you. But what are also those like deep in the trenches moments of your life? Because I don't doubt, I feel like I can confidently say, like, God places you through those moments to prepare you to do something almost like related to that, because those moments are your biggest teacher. So I guess a question that I want to ask you is, I guess, how resonant does that feel for you when they say that? Because to me, it just like feels so clear.
It's everything.
Yeah.
When okay, so right after I closed my studio, I took myself to New Mexico on a solo, just break from everything. I found this literal tiny house on 300 plus acres of desert. And I was like, I need to be alone. It was January. The desert is very cold. All the animals are hibernating and gone. It was the most silent I've ever been. No Wi-Fi, nothing. And I was really trying to just tune in after everything. And I found that, yes, I was kind of in this recovery-ish, I was still in the throes of it, but process of grieving my business. But simultaneously, I still was in the process of grieving our fertility journey.
Mm.
And the two of them had become so interwoven that it was hard for me to kind of parse these two storylines out. I have successfully done it through a lot of therapies and trauma healing. But at the time, it was really hard for me to see, which was hurting more, which was a lesson versus just something that was happening to me.
Yeah.
And I think what I came out of it with is that, listen, it is all lesson. Every dark period, every period where you feel out of your comfort zone, every period where you aren't quite sure how you're going to take the next step is for a huge, huge reason. And the universe, sure, puts these things in front of us, but I'm a big believer that these are also milestone moments that our soul agreed to way before we ever entered into this life, right?
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if you've read any Michael Newton work. Journey of Souls was a book that changed my
I
entire
haven't. No.
perspective. Yeah, when I had my kind of first phase of my own personal spiritual awakening, that book just landed on me and changed everything. And it's a book that I keep referencing because anytime something feels like an impossible to recover from situation, right? Whether it's, in my case, I mentioned we had multiple miscarriages. We went through IVF, you name it, we tried it, to get pregnant. And I really that is a very clear example of, okay, from there, I randomly would always wind up in conversations with another woman who had just experienced her first miscarriage or who had just started her fertility journey. And that's been this like a side journey of my own, or like in a video game, like a side challenge where you're like, okay, like we got to go do this thing too, where I found myself just repeatedly in a position to comfort and share and nurture another woman going through a similar but her own journey there. And that was a very natural thing for me. I've always been a nurturer. You know, I'm a type 2 on the Enneagram. So I very much am like making sure everybody feels, heard, cared for, considered. So when I had my studio, I was very much like a mama bear to everyone that I employed. And anytime I found myself leading teams, I get into that mode as well. So it's natural for me to want to share life experiences and help others with them. With the business, it took a lot longer for me to see the purpose of closing my business. In fact, it took 5 years, at least, until I was able to really connect the dots of, wow, okay, wait, all of that is such a powerful lesson that I can actually take and help others. I don't want to say avoid, because you never want someone to avoid the lesson, because the lesson's there for a reason for them. But how can they navigate this in a way that doesn't feel like it's the end for them, right? Because for me, it felt like there was a big F for failure written on my chest. I just, like I said before, felt like I failed everyone in my life. And that's not the case. Everyone survived. I survived. And I think when you're facing huge transitional moments, having someone there who's been through it, something similar, to hold your hand and comfort you is just, it's unspeakable, the value. So I don't know if that answered your question
No,
or went on.
absolutely. Yeah, no, it answered my question and then it prompted so many more questions for me, Jess. Because what you're speaking on, I think, is so important, whether it comes to business or life. I mean, you experienced a lot of kind of personal unfoldings with your journey of the miscarriages and everything. But I think this is so common. And this is too why I'm really excited about this season and bringing this topic and talking about this idea of change into the limelight a little bit more, because in whatever capacity we look at it, like everyone goes through it in different ways. And for me, I think if I look back at the last year for me, I think the biggest thing that I find so much resonance in your story is that similar feeling of like feeling like a failure and almost like questioning and doubting the perfect, because now I feel like I'm coming out of the fog a little bit and actually seeing all of these moments where I thought I failed, or like my business wasn't as successful as it was in the first 2 years. And instead of seeing it and questioning like why, shifting the perspective and really finding this like peace, even though I may not fully yet understand like all these reasons, but almost finding like an acceptance of like, you know what, God, for whatever reasons that you kind of brought me on this, it's okay. And I think, I don't know, I think this is probably the biggest thing for so many people when they're navigating these moments, whether it's a sudden loss or this rug getting pulled out of you and your comfort is gone and you're just like, what the heck? It's like this disacceptance, this like you're like really grappling with why. And I think you sharing your reflections, I think it was so beautiful how you were able to find a comfort, especially in the miscarriage journey, of like supporting these other women and seeing the intentionality behind that. Because I can't even imagine what the hardship that journey brought for you personally. And so to almost like, I don't know, like flip the script on this pain and again, turn it into this purpose, I think is so beautiful. And to come around to that same thing with business too, I think really the lesson for anyone tuning in, whether you're in that season right now of your life, or you went through it and you still haven't maybe yet fully accepted what has been, I think this is such a beautiful takeaway in like really just seeing the silver lining of it, like the glass overflowing type of energy and mentality.
It is, there's always a silver lining.
Yeah.
Always. It takes sometimes a long time to see it, but you touched on two things there. One is just finding the peace during the hard times, during the moments of self-doubt, right? And, you know, in the beginning, how you said, oh, I saw you on this panel. And I was like, oh my gosh, when I was sitting on that panel, I felt like such an imposter. I was like, looking around, I
That's so
remember
wild to hear.
Googling everyone else who was going to be on the panel and being like, oh my gosh, their studio is huge. They work for this big agency. Here I am with this tiny little
Oh
studio.
my
And I'm
gosh,
like,
can
what
I just say, Jess, like,
am I going to contribute? You know, and
it's so
it's
funny because
hard.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to like, it's so interesting how, because this reminds me too of myself and my personal imposter syndrome. And like to echo back to you, like I remember, and maybe because I don't know, I was like particularly interested in like the graphic design topic, and I forget what the other panelists was saying, were saying particularly, but like you outshined like everyone to me, and it's like I don't know, it's like your energy was the most vibrant, like, and I specifically remember that because I don't remember anyone else I just remember you because your energy was like so expansive. So to hear the self-doubt and the imposter syndrome that was happening, because I personally, and I think everyone tuning in feels that, but it's just so interesting. I don't know, I just wanted to share that with you because I saw you in a completely opposite light. I was like, who
And
is this boss bitch?
well, that's a good reminder for you when you're having these moments of, okay, why is my business not performing at the level it was in
Yeah.
the last 2 years? What's happening here? I think the underlying through line, so to speak, of it all is trust. This period, sometimes we're given, I like to think of it this way, we're given quiet periods.
Hmm.
Okay. It's a gift when it's quiet because it allows time for self reflection. It allows time for realignment. It allows time for you to nurture yourself. If you were running at full speed every single day, every single quarter, every single year, it's burnout. That's what I experienced. I wasn't giving myself the gift of time, quiet time. Um, and I do think that, I mean, not to get too out there, I've never really connected the dot before now, so let me just think it out loud.
Yeah.
But maybe for my own journey, well, I know I wasn't listening to my body. I think my body was trying to facilitate quiet time. Not necessarily the miscarriages, it's a different thing, but the sicknesses that I kept, things that would knock me out. And I went from not getting sick that much at all to like the last 6 months before I closed my business. It was like a roller coaster ride. And I do think it was my body speaking up saying, girl, you
Hmm.
got to slow down. You have to listen. I know you're pulling all your little cards, you're doing your thing, but you're rushing through it. And it all comes back around to that trust. And if you can trust in the timing of the quiet, if you can trust in the ebb and flows of your business, and if you can continue to have a dialogue with yourself on a soul level, whether that's through journaling, meditation, breath work, coming back home to yourself is the most critical ingredient to running a successful business.
Hmm.
Really do think about your business or your brand as this extension. It's an energetic extension of yourself. In some ways, it's like having a child, right? You've birthed this beautiful concept, you've put it out into the
Oh yeah.
world. Your brain, your body, everything is thinking, like, if you were to look at the percentage of energy you're giving yourself versus your business, really,
Hmm.
like, think about it now. More likely than not, the larger percentage of your energy is going to your business. You need to find the balance. And when that balance is off, when you stop giving yourself the quiet time, when you stop listening and tuning in, that's when you just start kind of running an autopilot. And there's this bigger disconnect. It's almost, like I said, kind of an out of body experience. And I find that with parenting now too, as a mom. I mean, there are days, weeks where, especially like he was really sick and home from school for an entire week, 2 weeks ago. I think we were supposed to have our recording.
Yeah. I remember you had emailed. Yep.
Home. And it's like, it's a forced stop
Mm-hmm.
for you as a parent, whether you have a full-time job or you work for yourself. It's a forced stop, because you have to be there. You have to be there for them. And so often you talk to parents, mothers especially, who feel so disconnected from themselves because the amount or percentage of energy they're giving to themselves has like come down to almost nothing, right? You're giving it all to your kids, which is great and wonderful. You want to nurture them and raise them to be good human beings, but you still are a human being yourself. So I really do think that the quiet is purposeful. The hard times are purposeful. There's always something to be learned. Even in the good times, you're learning things too. I mean, the whole reason why we're here is to learn and level up in our soul progression throughout, existence. So yeah, I think I answered.
Yeah, no, you absolutely did. And I so love how you worded all of the sentiments around the quiet. And immediately when you said that, it's so interesting how, at least for me, and I feel like I can speak for a lot of people, in the negative connotation that comes with quiet. And there's just such an obsession with always producing and doing. And if I look back at the last couple of years, which quiet is actually a really beautiful way to describe what the last 2 years for me have been like, especially the last 6 months as I unplugged from social media completely. Like I had deleted Instagram off my phone. I just made my reappearance yesterday to the world, which was so like
Welcome back.
wild. Um, but that was absolutely kind of the theme. And yet there was always this discomfort of feeling like I should be doing more or I'm not doing enough. And gosh, like if I could go back and tell myself, like, this is great, and just like try to shift my perspective in that moment, I could see how much more easeful that could have been. And of course, this is probably the lesson I had to learn in this moment of going through it, forcing so much, only to now finally, what feels like, I don't know, almost like 2 years, just find this like peace where nothing's really like shifted yet in terms of maybe where I place expectations. Because I'm speaking maybe specifically through the lens of like business. And I had expressed to you even on that first call of like feeling so much uncertainty. But, this actually brings me to share something interesting that has been a personal realization for me the last, I don't know, I feel like it's only been a month or so, in that I've been kind of putting expectations and seeking these outcomes, whether it's with business or money, as that's been kind of, a struggle for me too as of late. And yet it's almost like I'm not seeing all the other abundance that's actually been happening in my life. Where like I had this conversation with my partner and I'm like, my relationships with my family and my friends and my boyfriend are like the best I've literally ever experienced. And I just moved into a new home and like there's all of these things all around me. And I feel like I'm finally now anchoring and realizing like, whoa, like I'm actually so good. And like it's been quiet and all this stuff, but also not. And I think there's something to be said there around where we maybe place expectations on things kind of turning out a certain way. So I don't know a lot in that, but I'm curious if maybe looking back on your journey, if there was a little bit in that for you too, of expectation placing or being hard on yourself for it not looking like the way that you wanted to, but yet like God ultimately has the higher plan of what it is and should be, but we just can't see that, of course.
Well, I was so tempted to interrupt you, but I was like, this is not a coaching session. I'm not going to go there. But when you started saying should,
Hmm.
word should in
Yeah.
your household it's like the F word, right? Like it's
Hmm.
word. Like we should have taken a left on that street. No, 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 no.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
like always catch my husband. I'm like, we don't say should here. So when you said should, like what I should be doing, like in this quiet time, it's hard to kind of let go because you're like, oh, well, I should be writing this thing. I should be pitching this. I should be posting. I should be blah, blah, blah. And it's like, stop with the shoulds.
Yeah.
The shoulds don't actually exist. It is a reflection of the constructs of the society that we've just been ingrained with since birth, right? Like, you should be productive. You should be leveling up in your career. You should be, should be, should be. And it's this pressure to really just continue pushing forward without that pause, right? So if you can find peace with the pause, with the quiet time, keep the shoulds out of your peripheral, like kick them to the curb, right?
Yes.
And when they're not there, all of a sudden you can get a lot more clear about what the necessary next ingredient or next step is instead of what you should, right? So like there's a necessity versus a should do. And we get so caught up in the should do's, and they're oftentimes just distractions from the core of what is necessary for
So
and for
let me ask you, because this is so beautiful what you're touching on. How does one make that discernment between the necessity and the should? Like, what does that
discernment
look
is
like?
so discernment is, it's funny, it's like the word of the month for me. I hear this word like multiple
Oh,
times a
wow.
day. And I honestly view discernment as a muscle that you have to be working out every day, because discernment is a matter of understanding, what's real, what's fake, right? What is good, what's bad. It's like all of the polarities. But what gets hard is there are so many things that we kind of conjure up in our thoughts that just like, we're thinking however many thoughts a day that pass by. And we have to flex this discernment muscle. And like some of them are really tricky. It's not a clear polarity of good versus bad. It's like, is this a should or is this a need,
Yeah.
right? Or necessity. And I think the best way to really activate that muscle is, again, learning how to trust your instincts a bit more in your intuition. Your intuition and discernment are BFFs. They go hand in hand, right? Like your intuition, your body, your higher self, it all has the answers. It has the answers literally to everything if you can tap into it. So the clearer you are connected to your intuition, the easier and easier discernment's going to get. And you can challenge yourself with some little quick exercises. So a thought comes across like, oh, I need to post to Instagram today. I haven't done it yet, right? It's like, okay, well, wait a minute. Is this a should? I should post to Instagram. And why should you? Oh, because it's expected for the algorithm. I need to keep my engagement up. Da, 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 da. It's like, okay, but like, is that real? Is that going to have a huge impact on, you know, landing this client that you're talking to right now, or finishing this project so you can send the final invoice and get paid, or taking a break and like going to walk outside in the sun for a minute and recenter? It's like a moment where you have to challenge yourself. Okay, well, what does that actually accomplish? And what is a more necessary ingredient for me as a human being running a business today? And I think the more frequently you do this, and listen, it's not going to happen. You're not going to pause and go through this exercise every single time. But when you are staring at a to-do list, when it's 3 p.m., you're like, I have a couple hours left. What am I going to get done today? There's like, you could even, this is kind of a cool exercise you could do. If your to-do list has columns, right? I don't know where this would be. I wouldn't put a to-do list in Excel, but maybe it's in Notion.
No, we like Notion.
I like Notion. And maybe you just make a little drop down and it's like, is this a should or is this a necessity?
I love that.
So like as you're going through, and maybe it's the first exercise of your day, you're looking at everything on your to-do list. Okay, well, what are the necessary ingredients for making sure my business is humming in alignment with myself? Right? And
Mm-hmm.
anything that isn't a necessary or a necessity that's a should, okay, that just falls down. And you know what? If
Yeah.
you have 15 minutes and you just feel like posting something to Instagram and it's going to give you a little like dopamine burst at the end of your day, cool, do it. There's nothing wrong with it. But don't hold yourself like accountable to having to do this thing because what society tells you to.
Yeah, I so love how you worded that and explained that. And as you were speaking, I was literally going to ask you, do you have any tips or tricks or advice, like how to connect with your intuition and practice that? Because I feel like this is such a common thing. I can speak for myself. Like I've really been working at this too, like listening to that internal voice that nudges me. And I just so appreciate how you gave this simple example of like the Instagram post, but this could be translated and applied to anything and everything. Anytime a question comes up, and I think especially for those people, myself included, that have really struggled with like decision making and
Mm.
like really being just direct and decisive in the moment, in the now, without second guessing, without asking 500 people for their opinion, because that
Mm.
has been a journey
Mhm.
for me too. I think what you shared is really beautiful and powerful. And I think, anyone tuning in hopefully can garner that for themselves because I totally agree. It's that intuition that is the muscle that you lean on, that you work on over time that will guide you. And especially in the day and age too, and I think this is why it was actually so refreshing for me to be off of social media for the last 6 months because there wasn't that constant, yes, it's a distraction, but there is that like comparisonitis that we tend to like, you look at someone else and then that's when the shoulds actually come up because like
Oh,
actually I just like something
I feel like
connected for me.
it's the source of the shoulds is the
Yes.
comparison game, right? As soon as you
Yeah.
allow the constant comparisons to enter, it's like they come with a big old Santa Claus bag of shoulds
Yeah.
that just completely distract you. And the distraction is where you start to lose the connection points, right? And I know for myself when, that last year or so of JSGD, I never really allowed myself to view my studio's success as outsiders did. I was viewing it as, oh, well, this graphic design studio in Australia or wherever that has like a beautiful aesthetic, they just landed this client and like, look at the work they're doing. And oh my gosh, look at their service page. It's so clear. And like, oh, we should totally overhaul ours. We should.
Should,
Like,
yeah.
I would see it would take like a moment of, discovering a comparison out there, first viewing it as inspiration, then feeling the body reaction, which is that like feeling in your chest, like, oh,
Like a closed off, constricted, yeah.
you're doing better than I am. And then you're like, no, no, no. Okay, this is inspiration. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And the more you go down that road, the more you're kind of creating a business that isn't nearly as thoughtful and purposeful as it once was when you had that glimmer of an idea and a concept that you ran with. Because
Mm.
that initial idea and concept, the reason why you founded your business, that is the beauty. That is the nugget that you own. That is your unique idea. And the comparison traps that we run into, they all start to reshape our business because we are reshaping it based on what we think it should look like or be. And it happens to literally everyone. So a lot of the work that I'm doing now and what I've been doing, trying to do personally with myself is like strip away all of those comparisons and strip away back down to like that golden little nugget of an idea. What is unique, what feels good, what resonates with me on a soul level that I want to bring forth into this world? How can I help people? Right. And I think that there's just such a necessity to recenter. So again, there's like that discernment moment.
Yeah, yeah. And I think too, it's interesting in you walking us through your journey too, on how this really feels like a hard lesson and a long lesson that took you a while to essentially learn. It's connecting with your intuition and knowing when it is time to pivot or change or just, correct course, whatever you're on. And so, I'm thinking to what you shared in like all these signs were being presented for you with the body specifically. And it's so interesting too, because I look back at the time that I was in that architecture firm, and it is so wild now looking back. It's so obvious to me because my health at that time was so bad too, because I was not fulfilled in my job. The
Mm,
relationship I was in was also like starting to fall apart, and it was just this season of being so, so, so lost. And the moment I leave my job, the moment I leave my relationship, I mean, it didn't happen overnight, but it's like my health ailments just like completely disappeared. And I went off all the supplements and detoxes and all, like, I literally just like, I threw the kitchen sink at myself in trying everything. But if I knew now, like, it's so much deeper than that. Like a supplement will only mask the symptoms for a little while before it comes back. All of that stuff. So I relate so much to your story because I feel like with the body stuff, that was such a learning lesson for me too. And I think for anyone listening to, like, I think if you would have told me this, however, at that time when I was deeply unhappy and unsatisfied, I would have so laughed it off and brushed it. Like, what are you
really.
talking about? And so it took me so long to actually make this connection on the fact that these symptoms and these signs point so much deeper. And I think the real journey and struggle, I mean, even still to this day, because I feel like I at least have continued to kind of like be met with this lesson again, but it's a little faster and easier for me now. And I'm able to pick up on when there's like, yeah, I mean, essentially the signs coming up. When I feel some sort of ailment with my body, the discomfort, it's like, okay, what is happening here? Like, I immediately kind of, maybe not immediately, but eventually I will stop and just kind of, I don't know, just be a little bit more mindful to question what's going on. And so I just wanted to almost share that as maybe like a little point for people tuning in paying attention to those things, because I know for myself back then I would have so quickly disregarded it. And so I don't really know where I'm going with this. Maybe just to say that it's so beautiful in a way again to know
Yes,
that you had to go through that because you were able to then learn that lesson too.
totally. Yeah, I mean, I think what you're hovering around is really, it all comes back down to a journey.
Hmm.
We are all on a constant journey. Our entire life is a journey. And I think we so often assume that there is a destination we will arrive at and then we'll be done.
Yeah.
We're like, oh,
Hmm.
just peace out and like chill. But the beauty of life is that we are constantly evolving, we're constantly understanding more. And yes, hindsight is definitely 2020, right? Like we're able to look back and be like, wow, we were getting hit over the head with signs and like not listening to them. And guess what? We probably to this day are still getting hit over the head with signs that we're not listening to because
Hmm.
there are signs
Oh
everywhere.
yeah.
Um, I do think that as we grow, as we go through this journey, as we kind of get a little bit clearer and wiser with age, we're able to spot the signs sooner. Um, but everyone's journey is unique, and there there's this moment I think when we each at some point, hopefully in our lives, kind of lift our head up and realize, wait, I'm on this journey, and it's actually fun.
Mm.
Like, if there's a message I've been getting, a sign I've been getting a lot lately through meditation work and all of this is quite simply like, have fun with this. You asked in
I
the
love
beginning,
that.
where am I finding joy?
Hmm.
And the thing is, there's just joy everywhere, despite the world literally crumbling and society and
Yeah.
democracy and everything crumbling around us, there's so much joy and beauty to be found everywhere you look. It's it doesn't all have to be as serious as we make it. And I think that that is one of the funniest aspects about being human, is that we make everything so serious. I'm running a business. I'm a serious business owner. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
serious designer. Like, this is my career. I'm serious about it. But, and
Oh
it's
man.
okay
I feel
that way.
attacked.
We all are like this.
Yeah.
But there's this message coming through loud and clear to me, especially lately, to just have
I
fun.
love that.
And I don't know, maybe it's part of, having a 3-year-old too. Like,
Hmm.
my son just started leaning into more like imaginative play, like imagination based play. And it's funny because, I hadn't realized that he hadn't been doing it, but, there's the little kid play. He loves books, etc. But all of a sudden, out of the blue, he came home from school one day, and he, was playing with something, and he added a little like narrative, like, "Hi, I'm blah blah blah," and I was like, "Oh, that's so cute." But now just keeps evolving. Where, bedtime, his favorite thing to do right now is, we have these big fluffy pillows, and he likes to make pies. We bake pies,
Oh, I
so
love
we
this.
grab different things from his room. Okay, we're putting apples in. We're putting cherries in. We put it in the closet. That's his oven, right? And it's such a silly, normal thing for a kid to do. But we don't do, we stop at a certain point, right? Like, the imagination drops away as we get older. And I do think there's this beautiful aspect of parenting that kind of forces you back into imagination play,
Mm.
and seeing just how beautiful and fun everything around us can be. But also, to take it a step further, when you do start to understand energy, energetics, you realize that your imagination, that is literally creation, right? Like, we can create anything we want. We can create any business we want. We can create any lifestyle we want. It's all energy. So I think leaning into the fun, the playfulness, the imagination, the pausing, the quiet time,
Yeah.
it's finding this nice balance, whatever the balance is that works for you, where I just think this beauty erupts out of once you can just lean into it. And a lot of it is just quite simply surrendering into
Mm-hmm.
it.
That
Like, I always
word,
have
yeah.
this feeling, like, surrender is a key word,
Oh
and I'll
yeah.
catch myself trying to fall asleep. You go through the list of all the things that are stressing you out, all of the things that there's no way thinking about it can actually fix it, but you're thinking about it, right? And I'll catch myself doing that, and I'll put one hand on my heart, one hand on my belly. I do a couple breaths, and then I just surrender. I literally put my hands palms up next to me, and I have my own little like mental prayer of like, I'm surrendering all of this. And I'm surrendering to this journey and this process, that I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring in this journey. But no matter how hard it is, I know that there's going to be lessons to glean from it left and right. And that in itself is beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Surrender. It wasn't my word of the year 2 years ago was trust, but I think surrender came so hand in hand with that word. And I like to consider myself more of a type A perfectionist, controller. Like, I like to know what's happening, when it's happening, why, all of that. And so it has certainly been a journey of coming to meet that word deeper in the last couple of years for me. So I so resonate with everything you're sharing about that, Jess. I wanted to back up almost a little bit, but I think this will also just maybe come full circle to the dialogue that we've had for this lovely hour. In when you talked about your journey specifically with those, maybe we can say like 3 seasons. It was your 3 transitions. It was the journey of you starting your business, and then the journey of then you venturing into corporate, like a more traditional type of setting, to now you coming back on almost the other side, we could say, to reconnecting with your business.
Mhm.
I think for me, and I can imagine people kind of tuning in and listening, that feels almost like those three segments of your life feel like you're on one end of the spectrum, then you go on the other, and then you're like back on the other.
Oh yeah.
And so I guess the question that I have is like, if you could maybe just share more about like the sentiments, the feelings that you were experiencing, but also as you look back, that almost like embody those transitions in particular. Because
Mm.
as business owners, I know for myself, people ask me, like, oh, are you going to be doing your business for your whole life? And I'm like, well, I can't freaking imagine anything else. Like, it's so freeing. I make my own schedule. I'm my own boss. Like, there's all these perks. And there is the part of me that's like, I can't imagine working for someone else again.
Right.
But yet, I know that with like a more corporate setting, there's also the perks of stability and, just like a certain, again, if we want to go back to that word certainty, like there is a certainty that, you're going to be getting a paycheck every other week, so long as, of course, you're a good employee and you're doing your job well. But yeah, I think it's just fascinating that your life journey has taken you on quite literally what feels like opposite ends of the spectrum back and forth. So yeah, just tell us a little bit more around the feelings related to those
Oh,
very opposite transitions.
okay. Well, when I found myself at Continuum, I like to say that I kind of fell backwards into that role. I had just closed the studio maybe 2 months earlier. Their head of HR had called me, or head of people, and she had attended a few events that I hosted at my studio. We did a lot of educational events, and after 2016's election, we had a lot of kind of let's come together and hold each other's hands and have some, you know, team group meditations, all this stuff. So she had attended a few events. She reached out and she was like, "Listen, our company, our agency has an overflow of work. Can JSG take this on?" And I was like, "Okay, well, there's no more JSG. It's just me, but I'm happy to talk to you about it." So I went into their offices. It felt so surreal walking into this beautiful spaceship style corporate innovation agency. Everything's white and pristine and like just very high end. I sat down in this boardroom, met with a team of men, of course, who briefed me on this project. And again, super imposter syndrome, but I heard the concept. I was like, okay, I can run with that. I can do it. I think it was building out a brand standards deck for Coppertone sunscreen and helping them with some point of sale or like POP designs and whatnot. I was like, oh yeah, okay, that sounds fun. I can totally do that. Well, day one was actually meeting my team at the airport, at Logan Airport, and flying to Coppertone headquarters with them.
Oh, wow.
Um, and then diving into some research, interviewing people and doing all that. And I was like, okay, this is actually really cool. Like this was my first time, traveling on different company's dime, and sitting in bigger boardrooms and doing all these things, right? So in many ways, the feelings that were coming up for me were like total overwhelm. It was out of my comfort zone. There was this funny, lingering failure feeling. I mean, granted, I'm still fresh off of closing my business. So that was like very loud and clear for me. But I think I had viewed working in corporate as like the antithesis of what I wanted to do with my life.
Mm.
So I was battling this weird identity crisis of, okay, like I'm here I am, corporate America, like doing this thing. But at the time I was still just contracting for them. After I completed that project, I was talking to them. They're like, we have a role for you if you want to come on board full time. And, I remember looking around a lot. I was like, well, I don't see anyone crying. People are leaving early to go to their kids' soccer games. Like, it was a really healthy company culture there. So it helped me have like a full body yes in that moment. Like there wasn't a hesitation. I was just like, yeah, okay, cool. And when I saw what they wanted to pay me, I was like, whoa, that's more than I ever could have made with where my studio was, the trajectory of that, So it was a loaded experience for me because, like I said, I felt like I was succumbing to, I don't know, corporate America. It had an ick factor, but it still had a full body yes factor. And what I didn't know at the time, because how could I, was that the skills that I was about to learn in my I think I was there 4 years, were going to completely change the trajectory of my career. And in such a beautiful way, right? I got to work on this project shortly thereafter, helping Jamba Juice become relevant again. That was the app. Like, tell us how to be relevant. Like, the projects were cool, right? They were like very, very different from what I was used to. And I found that I just so loved, which of course makes sense because I'm a 2 Enneagram, I'm a connector. I loved connecting with people through research. So what we practiced there was qualitative ethnographic research. And what that means is it's going into the field to talk to customers in their homes, multiple hours a day, sometimes, traveling with them to the supermarket to see their shopping habits, or riding with them. Southwest was a big client of ours. I didn't get to do this, but I had colleagues who did, where riding with first-time flyers of Southwest, meeting them in their homes, taking the taxi with them, sitting next to them on the plane, experiencing the entire experience through their eyes and asking them questions.
It's so wild that there's like a job, like people do this as a job.
Yes.
So
and
wild.
I got to do it. It was so
cool.
It was so awesome. And I honestly just, like I said, I fell in love with the research part. I fell in love with connecting with people who I would never normally get to connect with. Like an 18-year-old boy in his kitchen in Mississippi, talking to him about, his relationship to ordering food on his phone, right? And like having him walk me through his house and what he eats on a daily basis, people I would never get to meet otherwise. And it really opened up my own eyes as a brand designer to the necessity of understanding not only the customer's perception of your brand, but the belief systems that they've been raised with and how their own journey in their life has impacted those belief systems and the behaviors, and thus the relationship with your brand. So it was shining a light on this totally third aspect that I hadn't really spent much time with. So with my studio, it was a lot of working with the founders, taking their idea, making it a beautiful logo, beautiful site, packaging, you name it. But it was at the early stage. And every once in a while we'd have a fun rebrand project, but we weren't factoring into the scope of work, research time to talk to the customers. We were looking at the competitive landscape and whatnot. So it was just a totally different area that was so endlessly fascinating to me. And then we would take all of the insights that we would learn from this research, synthesize them into themes, and basically present back to the companies who had hired us. Okay, well, these are your opportunities. Okay, there's a big theme coming up around, I don't know, healthy lifestyles for Jamba Juice, right? Or there's also a theme coming up around, well, I could just make this at home, or I can just da-da-da. So it's how can we lean into the current needs and current belief systems of your current clients or your ideal clients, and meet them where they're at versus expecting them to meet us where we're at as a brand. So that work, super instrumental to the work I'm doing now, because it's really looking at a brand from a much more holistic viewpoint all of a sudden, right? So if I'm able to work with a founder and understand their limiting belief systems, and then also meet with their customers and understand their behaviors and belief systems, and come together, okay, well, let's figure out where this brand actually needs to go so that we're charting a path forward that will resonate for everyone, every stakeholder, essentially. Anyways, your original question about the feelings that came up, like I said, it took me some time. I had really lost my identity when I closed the studio. So that chapter working with Continuum was a lot of me trying to figure out who I was again.
Yeah.
And I remember one of my managers telling me there, you have to brand yourself here. I was like, oh God, I'm a brand designer, I have to brand myself. And I struggled so much. And he kept saying, he's like, well, you want to get on these kind of projects or this, it was a lot of internal networking within this company, right? So the closer you were with the salespeople and the sales team, for example, that typically talk to these type of clients, you want to work on these type of projects, you have to brand yourself. So they're going to staff you on those projects or bring you along through the sales process. So it was a totally different way of seeing myself, yes, branding myself, but branding myself as a person and not as a business all of a sudden. So it forced me to figure out, okay, well, what am I attracted to? What kind of work do I like to do? What kind of brands do I want to work with? And unfortunately, I became this, I wouldn't say stick in the mud, but like kind of when it came to morality there. And the sales team had a hard time, and in general had a hard time staffing me because, for example, oh gosh, okay, we're really going to go on a tangent, but it's a
Let's do
perfect
it.
example.
Let's do it.
So when I had my studio, one of my big clients was Folane. At the time, it was owned by Tara Foley. She launched a beautiful store, boutique in Boston South End. It was one of the first stores in Boston that sold only skincare with clean ingredients.
I remember Folane.
Forefront of the clean beauty movement. And through that work, I ended up working with a lot of the brands that she carried. And I had such a love for clean beauty. I was just like, an ambassador to it. Like I had my own no list for ingredients, like I really was, it was a stronghold for me. And I remember Mary Kay was a large lead that we had at Continuum. I'm sure my NDA is long expired, so I'm talking.
Good.
So all of our salespeople were, working hard to land this project with Mary Kay, and they knew I had a lot of experience in the beauty industry. So they brought me in for the sales process, and here I am, stick in the mud. I was like, okay, but are we going to talk to them about the ingredients they're using? Are we going to talk to them about the fact that so many women are targeted in moments of desperation financially to become Mary Kay reps, and that there are countless stories of families going bankrupt because they're forced to buy the products? And I'm like digging up articles and journal reports and all of this stuff, like bring it to the sales team. Like, I know you want this project because we can probably make a couple $1,000,000 off of them, but do we really want, like, what are we here to help them with? Because if we're not here to help them shift their entire business operations and mission and approach to like product formulation and how they're nurturing their sales force, I don't want to be a part of it. So then they kind of going to the other person like, okay, you suggested Jess, but like this is a disaster. She's not gonna, so like,
oh my gosh.
so
I can only imagine.
It was brutal. And just that was kind of a repeating narrative anytime I was brought into the fold for sales, because I was a director there, so I was both leading teams but also heavily involved in the sales component of the business. So anytime I was brought in, I ended up kind of like being a shit stirrer and saying, okay guys, but do we really want them as a client? And then when I was actually on projects, I also was kind of the person who, as we'd be talking to customers or getting deeper into these businesses and understanding how they're working and whatnot, I would just start to get so resentful and negative because it did not align with me on a soul level. I was like, I don't want to be helping this business take advantage of customers. I don't want to be helping them take advantage of their sales reps in these different areas and whatnot. So over time, while yes, I fell in love with the research, I hated that job more and more and more because I was in the driver's seat of who we were helping, right? And we had a parent company by the time I left, so there was a totally different level of pressure on the sales team, and I was very much like, I can't morally continue this.
Yeah,
I
well, I
learned to
can see it. I can so see it. I'm so glad you went on that tangent to share that example because you had mentioned it briefly like at the beginning of like there just being a moral misalignment. But you offering that story really just lets us in on what that looked like. And I think it's interesting because like I'm sure it probably took a bit of time for you like because this was like to me it feels like this was the sign in that opportunity for you to eventually pivot and move and all that. And it's interesting, like I consider, a lot of people back to the kind of like sign conversation, it's like people are probably dealing with these signs but choose to ignore it. So I think it's absolutely worth like underlining the fact that in this instance for you, knowing who you are, knowing your values, being so connected to them. Like, because if it wasn't for that, like, I could see you not being that person or not, you just going with the flow or you seeing just the dollar signs or whatever it was. And so I think even more beautiful and even more just like intentional in the greater scheme of everything that you've been through, now coming into the present day today with Terre-Prana back to business, back to you having ownership again, because it sounds like that was something very much lacking for you, not having as much of a say, because I can imagine the corporate,
it
things you
is
have to go
it is
through.
hard to go from being the boss to having a boss again.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
takes a lot of
Surrender. I bet.
surrender.
Back to that word.
But it forces you to really let go of your ego.
Yeah.
And the amount of ego deaths we each experience through every chapter of our life. I mean, I think that was a big one for me was, okay, I have to swallow this. This is not my game. This is not my business. And it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you did it. You went through it, and I think it's definitely again worth underlining because a lot of people wouldn't. Like they just would either ignore the signs or just be lured
Of course.
into
Yeah.
that narrative. So I think it's so beautiful and to know that you're at this place now where there it really sounds and feels like there is just the most almost like peace I want to use and like alignment with what you're doing because it really, really does feel like you having been through this journey, taking all that you garnered from it and repurposing it in this way that is so aligned with Jess in this life season. I think, I mean, for me, it's just like, damn, that's for sure all worth it. Because I think
It is.
yeah,
I mean, it all takes risk, right?
yeah,
Even closing my business was a risk. I could have held on. I could have tried to make it work. It wasn't right. It was a huge risk leaving my corporate job because financially, oh my gosh, it was terrifying. And going in house, like I was most recently, was a big risk too. Like diving back into a small, medium sized business, that's in the process of scaling and navigating their own growth. It was a huge risk for me. And in many ways, it worked out. In other ways, it didn't. It was a difficult role for me. I was able to, I remember the first few months just saying like, wow, I feel like I'm fully lit up. Like all of the skills that I've been adding to my toolkit in my career are getting activated here, right? Like I was able to really lean in and do a lot. But at the end of the day, it still didn't fully resonate. And I think taking the risk to launch something again, I mean, it all comes down to that trust and that surrender. I think there's this interesting piece that has come over me with this business. I haven't panicked once about clients. I haven't panicked about money. I've been very resolute almost in my faith that I'll be supported. This is all going to work out. And I think a lot of that is because the trust has been earned, right? Like I have learned the hard way time and time again to just simply trust that the universe, God, has my best intentions in mind all the time, and that I'm fully supported, not only here in this dimension, but beyond,
Yeah.
right? And if I didn't have that trust, I wouldn't be able to find the courage to start again.
So good. So, so good. I mean, I feel like we can like mic drop and end there because that was like such a beautiful, like a full circle on honestly, come around to sharing the beginnings of your story and what you navigated to now being at this place that really is so rooted in just the faith, the surrender, and all of that. So, oh, I mean, I can chat with you for hours. Just I think you just dropped so many amazing things, and like again, I was taking notes, and I'm like, I want to ask you so many things. But maybe
Well,
we
I
can
can
do
hang
a part
on as
two.
long as you want. I don't know how long reader or listeners want to
I
listen
mean,
to.
there's oh, gosh, I personally I love the Joe Rogan 3 hour long episode. It's like I can keep going. Sometimes when he has like a really good guest, I'm like, let's keep rolling. So I do kind of want to ask you if you have time because this was another topic that I wanted to almost venture into related to what you're currently doing with Terre-Prana. I'd love your take on just like coaching in general. And you touched on it in the beginning a bit because being in this place where you experience mentorship, you were guided, you learn so much, and having a mentor, I think you said it, like having someone who has been through it, someone that you could lean on for support, to really be there for you to me, it just feels like bring more ease into your day every day because doing it on your own can be very hard. And I'm just very curious on your thoughts and feelings around just coaching today because we touched
Mm,
on this in our conversation when we connected last month. And I'd love to just go a little deeper with you because, gosh, I've been in my own relationships with so many mentors and they've been beautiful. I'm so fortunate to say, like, my mentors have really aided me so much. But I've heard horror stories of people getting scathed and just
yeah.
not working out so beautifully for them. And I think in today's day and age where like you turn and you look and it feels like everyone is a coach. And it's almost like that word has gotten almost like
Oh,
yeah,
it
like
has,
an ick. There's an
has
ick
a bit.
factor now. And
Yeah.
but when you zoom out, and to me, it's like I think about like the bigger picture of like everyone to me is both a student and a teacher in their own regards at all times because we as humans we're
Oh,
always
totally.
learning, but then because we're growing and we're having our unique human experiences, we also in a way are almost like credible to teach and support because of what we've been through. But I think unfortunately people have started taking advantage of the teaching in the coaching context, and like even me where like I'm kind of leaning into this season of like educating more, but then I'm like, oh, but like do I call myself a coach or a mentor? So I guess just I'm so curious, and tell us maybe about your sentiments and perspectives related to that, and maybe if you've grappled with similar feelings launching Terra and
Completely.
literally calling yourself a coach now.
Yeah. For a long time, I was searching for an alternative word to coach because
Yeah.
it carries such a big ick factor. And I think especially, because I've had coaches and I've been one of those who have gotten burned by a coach in the past,
Mm,
which was a really hard thing for me to experience because, well, when you work with a coach, you're really trusting them and you're opening up to them. So to have that trust broken, anytime trust is broken, it's hard to find it with the next. But I've had some wonderful experiences with coaches as well. I think it feels even more ick for me because I do live in Los Angeles, where there are coaches on every corner, life
Yeah,
coaches,
I
everything
bet.
you can imagine. Like you put up any term in front of it, coach, like they exist, right? Um, the frustrating thing is it's hard to find a good alternative to summarize what the work I'm doing actually is. Because with founders, that one-on-one coaching is quite literally me coming in, being a sounding board, helping them kind of recenter and all the things we've talked about, right? But what I've been very clear on is there's a very big difference between coaching and consulting, which I also do, and trying to parse apart between the two when talking about my service offerings has been a little tricky, right? It's like, well, I can come in and I can coach you, which is deeper, transformative work. It's a lot to do with your own, limiting beliefs, your belief system, your mindset, your approach to your business, right? And then there's the consulting work where, I'm helping teams. I'm helping, as a fractional creative director, coming in and helping run workshops internally for companies and whatnot. And it's very different work. They share a similar, um, number one ingredient, which is that idea of brand somatics, which I don't think anyone else is using. And I'm trying to trademark now because I
Yeah,
love it.
I was gonna say, for you for sure have been the first on my radar integrating this. So
Yes.
yeah, pursue the trademark for sure.
I am. I actually am talking with a trademark lawyer
Good,
tomorrow. So by
good.
the time we talk next, I'll own that term. But the idea of brand somatics really it's everything we've talked about already, right? It's seeing your brand as a holistic 360 energetic extension of the founder, right? And how it the ripple effects that you, the nucleus of the system, the founder, your energy has on everything to do with the business. So the coaching work, yeah, I struggle still with that term, but I just don't know what else to call it because I feel like if I say it's mentorship, it kind of sets me into this different category of, I'm here for you to learn from my experiences.
Mhm.
Whereas with coaching, I I know your experience is going to be wildly different than mine, and I want to help you through it. And I'm going to be learning through your experience at the same time, right? So I don't see myself as approaching any relationship with my clients as like having the answers for them. I'm helping them tune into the answers they already have inside of themselves.
Mhm.
So it's really just guiding them through, some exercises, frameworks. I had a client recently tell me, they're like, this is basically just business therapy for me. And
Oh,
I was
I
like,
love that.
hey.
Yeah.
So, I don't have a therapist degree, so I hesitate to use the term business therapist, but it could fit,
It
right?
could.
It's
Yeah.
looking at, you know, you, the founder, it's looking at the business beyond just branding. And like I said at the very start, like I see business and brand kind of as the same thing. The brand is the outward facing experience of your business. The business is the inward facing, like operations, momentum, work that you're doing. They can't exist without each other. So whether it's business therapy, brand therapy, I worry with brand therapy, it sets me right into being a designer again, which I don't really have as much interest in doing anymore. So yeah, here we are, coaching.
Yeah.
It fits,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I love the way that you explained it, and I so understand and can relate to the struggle with the differentiation because there is something because I so believe in the power of words and the etymology and
Mm.
like the real depth and meaning behind it. I just think, it's one of those things that unfortunately like the culture around it has been almost muddied a little by those few select people out there who are
Oh yeah.
almost taking advantage of the system, which leads me to want to ask you a question, and I think this could be helpful for people tuning in who have ever been curious about mentorship, seeking a coach. Can you maybe share with us some red flags that people can anticipate or look out for, either from your personal experiences or just of what you've
Mm.
seen? Like, what can you avoid and run away from, versus also, if you want to allude to, like, what qualifies someone per
Sure.
se to be a better coach?
Yeah, I think the number one red flag are promises.
Mm.
Because as a coach, you, like I said, you're not here to, at least my view of a coach is not here to deliver a solution to you. I'm here to work with you to identify a solution together. I'm not going to sit here and promise, oh my gosh, you're going to be totally transformed after 3 sessions, or your business is going to be making X percentage more after 6 months working together. That's an impossible promise to make. And if a coach is coming to you with promises, especially financial promises, that is a huge red flag to me. Because the only way you can actually start to see uh, a return like that is if you're bringing the same level of energy, surrender, trust, all of those important ingredients to the table, and you're working together. So for a coach to say that that will happen without having any understanding or insight of what that client is going to bring to the table, it's, you can't have that promise. You can't rest on it. So that is like red flag number
That's a
one to
good
me.
one. That's a good one. Yeah, we can, like, to quite literally cite, like, I 10x my revenue, monthly revenue, or I know the monthly milestones of like the 10K or the 20K achievements. I think anything from the financial front, for me at least, I've started to see as like, okay, but I get it. There are people there, and I think it this because I so believe in like the energetic frequency match of like, if you're chasing money, then you're probably going to want to work with a coach that is like touting those things.
Well, and that's the thing, like, how do I say this? Not every coach is right for every person.
Mm-hmm.
And just because someone is chasing the money and they want that 10x return or whatnot on their investment of working with a coach, that's great for them. I could almost guarantee that they're not tapped in and that they're leaning into all the shoulds. I should be doing this. I
Yeah.
should be hitting this milestone. I should be hitting this obscene KPI. I should. And therefore, I should get this coach who's going to help me, charge more and all that. That was the exact um, trajectory I went down with my business. The coach I landed with then wasn't making huge promises, but it was very rooted in how do I financially level up my
Yeah.
business.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the big reason why I've started Terre-Prana, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but is because that coach and I never stopped. We never took that time. I think I said this at the start today. Like, we never took the time to pause and see what the business needed, the brand business needed, and what Jess needed.
Yeah.
And I think had we paused and like tried to take, okay, like let's look around. What messages are we getting? What signs was coming up physically in your body? If we had like stopped and actually focused on the health of myself as the founder in the business before tackling like new financial tiers and like pricing systems and all that, it probably would have had a very different result.
Mm-hmm.
But the beauty of it, because I'm not going to go back and say, oh, we should have done that, because
Right.
again, should is an
Right.
awful word. The beauty of what happened with me is that because we bypassed that core alignment work, it actually fast tracked my realization that I did not want to be in this business anymore. I did not
Mm.
want to be doing any of that.
Yeah.
Had we, um, had I energetically come to the table really truly wanting it, maybe JSG would still exist. I have no
So
idea.
interesting.
It's
Right.
funny to
Yeah.
think, the sliding doors of it all, but energetically, I was not there. Health wise, I wasn't there. And I wish that that coach had helped me realize that. I don't know where we would have landed if I had realized maybe we would have had a slower, petered out closing, right? Or this abrupt, like, okay, cool, like, shit, and having to lay off my team right before the holidays. And all
It's
of
like
that just felt.
everything for a reason. Yeah, everything for such a beautiful reason.
But now I'm able to, coming full circle, see the value in really doing the work with founders to understand what is actually the best next step for them. And it might not be setting financial goals. It might not be hiring another team member. It might quite simply be, okay, we got to let go of some of these offerings you have, like your surface. You're offering too much of yourself. Let's create some boundaries for your own energy and protection. So it could look like more of a contraction than an expansion, but the contraction is important and critical for your own personal health and development and the development of your business. Mm-hmm. So I think that the promises are where you really start entering into this territory of super danger.
Yeah. And I think to what you just shared, everyone's business is so unique. And from my experience, like whenever I would approach a previous mentor with like an issue, it's never what I thought the issue was. And so it takes that deeper inquiry and the wisdom really to understand that this is going to be layered and it's going to take some time. So I think it's beautiful what you shared. I'm curious if there's any others that come to mind, either red flags or green flags for you.
Green flags.
Yeah, maybe some green flags, some goodies for like what makes a good qualified coach.
I think a green flag is a coach who wants to take, if they call it a discovery call, that's fine. I also think discovery call has a little bit of an ick sometimes because it just feels so formulaic. But a big green flag for me is if they get on the phone with you and they genuinely want to understand who you are as a person and not just who your business is or what your business is. Because it's important to know who you are going to be working with. It's just as important as a coach to know who the potential client is, because until you talk to them, you need to make sure that that energy feels good between you as well. I've had plenty of discovery calls where I've known within a few minutes, like, that's not the client for me. Mm-hmm. Lovely to meet them. Best of luck. I'm not going to even try to sell myself, because why would I give my energy to someone who I know we're not going to get anywhere. Yeah. So I think a green flag is getting on a call with someone and having them genuinely care to know you deeper and not just immediately like go into sales mode. Because you know what, if a coach is having the same sales pitch to every single person, they're doing that out of a mode of like financial shoulds.
Yeah, scarcity.
More clients, yes, versus who comes through. And my favorite clients are those who just happen to like come through and we hit it off. We're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I could talk to this person forever. Yeah. This is great. Let's create some magic together and help you get a little bit clearer along the way. And it's so fun. And then that comes back around to like, let's just have fun with it.
Yeah. Oh, back to the fun thing. I love it. Oh, that's the reminder that I feel like I need framed and like a little art piece in my room. Yeah.
Life is intended to be fun.
Let's be light. Let's be easeful. Let's just remember to have fun. I love that. Oh, so good. Well, Jess, thank you for, I was like, I really was hoping we could touch on that because I was just so curious on your thoughts. And you shared a bit when we talked last month on the coaching piece. So thank you for just being open to sharing your sentiments around it. Like I shared, I can truly keep chatting with you for hours. And I feel like maybe we do like a part 2 or something in the future, because there's like so many other questions that came up for me during this chat. But I feel like maybe this could be a good place to close for now. And we revisit in the future when the perfect timing aligns. But before we go, I do have a few just like more rapid fire-esque questions that I just like to close each episode with. So if you're ready, I can go ahead.
Lay it on me. Let me take a sip of water.
Yeah. Perfect. The
Okay.
first is, where and how do you garner creative inspiration?
Oh gosh. Hmm. Oh man, there's like a 2013 version of me who would say
Oh,
Pinterest.
yes, I love a good Pinterest.
Lately, Substack has been a
Ooh,
huge place of inspiration for me. I just started writing there. It feels so good to be writing again.
yeah.
But what I've fallen in love with there is just the feed of everyone sharing creative ideas. And it's not always like promoting their work, but I'll click over. I'm like, oh, who's this person? And then I wind up on their Substack with all their thoughts and like ideas. And it's been so fun for me lately.
Oh, I
It's like a
love.
whole new platform for me to be exploring. It's
Yeah,
been fun.
Substack has been blowing up, and I'm wondering, do I get on it? Because I just
Yeah.
shared my first newsletter yesterday as I like made my reappearance on social and all that. And it felt so good to write stream of consciousness in my
Mm.
newsletter. And I have a blog and I was on Medium, but I know Substack, I think the beauty of it is the interactive. It's like a social media for
It is.
writers.
And there's so much, just so much discovery potential, not only for
Yeah.
yourself, but like for finding inspiration. I mean,
Yeah.
I've just stumbled across so many just beautiful minds there,
Oh,
and I
so
love
good.
seeing how people think. So,
Oh, so good. I'll put that on my list. I will definitely grow to check it out because I've seen it everywhere and I'm like, maybe this is like a little nudge for me too to get on there.
go for it. Listen
Amazing.
to the signs.
Okay, so next question. Do you have any practices, techniques, or rituals that you lean on in times of transition or when you know you like there's like a season of change that might be coming or as you're navigating it?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, my tried and true, which I need to do more often personally, is just simply journaling.
Hmm.
Um, Again, I feel like journaling can also have like a bit of an eye roll attached to it. But like you said, that free writing, as soon as you let go of formatting and having, perfect sentences and you're just letting essentially spirit come through, it's a form of channeling creative, divine energy and spirit. And um, what I love to do, especially in times of transition, is actually open up my old journals,
Mm.
especially to look for, times of previous transition
Yes,
periods.
you
And
mentioned that to me. Yeah, as like a
it's
little
really
piece of advice. I have
powerful.
yet to do that. And now as you're talking about it, I'm like, I need to do that.
It's so powerful to look
Yeah.
I think I actually shared, maybe I like shared it in an Instagram story. I saw a meme yesterday, um, and it said, reading my old journals, and she doesn't know who I am, but I know who she is.
Hmm.
And there's some power to that, right? Like you can recognize every single feeling and emotion, but you're reliving it through a totally different lens. And it shifts your perspective all of a sudden that whatever is feeling insurmountable in this moment or whatever period of transition you're in, you can look back and be reminded that you got through all of those other periods of
Yeah.
transition with such grace. And what I love to do lately, I've been trying to take baths more. I think that
We love a
water
bath.
has such a beautiful cleansing energy, but also it has like a wonderful channeling energy too. So what I've been trying to do is when I take a bath, when I find the silence, I try to connect with a younger version of myself, possibly taking a bath. And I
Mm.
think, okay, I'm sure I took a bath at some point when I was 22. Can I like reach out, hold her hand, comfort her? She's probably upset over a boy or something,
Aw.
right? And like,
Mm.
what message can I send backwards to my previous self? And then I give myself a little bit of quiet time to receive. And I ask my future self to send me a message from a bath in my 50s
Oh,
somewhere.
I love
So
this.
I know I'm going to start crying now
This
because
is
it's
so
been so
good.
powerful for me lately.
Yeah.
Um, but I had this beautiful meditation recently. It was a guided meditation I listened to where I came face to face with my future self. And I must have been in my late 60s, and I was so calm. And I just, oh gosh, I can't. And I was sitting on this chair, and I walked up to my future self, and my future self just wrapped me like a mom.
Oh.
And it was, there's a lot there. But I have to say the journaling has been kind of a reminder that time is not linear. There's a younger version of yourself, an older version of yourself existing in this moment. And embrace her, because every single part of this journey she's experiencing right now. And it's a nice reminder when you pause and you're like, what are the signs? I know I'm getting signs. Well, guess who's probably sending you those signs? Your future self, right? And if you think back to the signs that you were missing in your younger self, well, send some signs back to her now, because that's all still happening, right? Time is this funny little illusion that we've constructed. So anyways, that's my little tip for the day.
That was so, so good. And I'm so glad that you expanded on that answer a little bit, because I think it just brought deeper clarity to the power of it. And also,
sorry it wasn't rapid fire.
no, I mean, I should just call these closing questions, because they rarely ever turn out to be like 10-second responses. I think they're also a little bit more denser in, like, you can't really answer in like 2 words. Like, you really want to kind of give some more context. So maybe for future self, I'll say, we'll call these my closing questions. But no, I so appreciate that response. And yeah, and I hope for people tuning in and listening, you know, journaling for me has been a practice that I for sure, it's definitely supported me in so many ways, just to kind of get words out. And you know, if you haven't tried it, I always encourage it. Like, even if like there's the hesitation around it, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron is like a beautiful, beautiful book that talks about the practice and how you can better connect with it. And ever since I read that, it helped me kind of get past that personal block. But I found so much comfort, and just answers come to me through my own writing. So beautiful.
Well, because you're channeling into your higher self. You're letting go of the ego when you start free writing, right? And the ego is the one that carries all the shoulds, etc. Right? So as soon as that voice starts to take a back seat, you're able to really tap in. And I think that's the beauty of free writing and journaling. And I wish that people saw it less as like a dear diary, today was hard, and more of like a, no, you are really tapping into yourself via this modality.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, my last final question that I always love to ask guests on every show, because the show is called the Homecomings Podcast, and my brand is rooted in the essence of home, I always love to ask, what is your favorite memory of home?
Oh, goodness. Memory of home. We had a really big backyard when I was growing up. And my brother and I just spent so much time creating little worlds back there. I mean, every little cluster of rocks became a kitchen and a doctor's office and everything. And there was just so much beautiful imagination that was created out of like the simplicity of nature. And I think it's very hard for us to find that as we become adults. So yeah, I haven't thought of that in a long time, but I think that's probably my favorite memory growing up.
I think it's so beautiful. You shared earlier about your son and how he's in that stage now where it's like imaginative play is at the forefront of it. And I'm not yet a mom, but I definitely hope to be. And I'm living vicariously through my best friends right now who are all having their kids. And it's just so beautiful. But I can't feel it for myself, of course, because I don't have my own child, but I can see it. Like, I can imagine that. So beautiful that you almost have like a mini you reconnecting you with that beautiful memory. So it's really special.
Definitely.
Yeah. Oh, so good.
Well, this was such a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on. It was such an honor, and like just so beautiful to like share this space with you today and this conversation. I love
Yes.
where it took us. Oh my
Me
gosh.
too. I'm always I set the intention behind every call to just like allow God to guide us wherever we need to go. And so, like I shared, have my talking points, but I stay open. And we didn't touch on like anything like that I had like structured per se. Like I had like I knew I wanted at some point to ask about the coaching and some of the business transitions, but it really took a life of its own. And these are always my most favorite when it just like has its own essence. So I'm so excited to share this with everyone, tuning in, and I hope people listening can garner whatever bits of inspiration, comfort for sure, because again, this journey of the change is so resonant to really anyone, whatever that may look like. And I'm just grateful to you and for you, Jess, for being open and so vulnerable and just letting us in on your very special journey. So thank you again. And just share with us where people can find you if they want to work with you, what that looks like. Plug
Sure.
yourself.
Okay, plug myself at Terre-Prana, Terre-prana.com is my main website. Like I mentioned, I just launched Substack, so you can find me there. It's The
Yes.
Energetic Business.
Ooh,
And then Terre-Prana on Instagram. I have 2 underscores in between. I like the space.
yeah, the space, intentional space.
Intentional space. I focus just so much on connecting spaces between thought, breath, earth, business, etc. So it's all the space.
It's perfect.
Yeah,
Oh,
find me everywhere. I'm on the internet.
amazing. Thank you so, so much again, Jess.